Two dropped out. One had a family emergency today and the other withdrew a few days ago. So with us today, we have Jasmine Maying, we have Gruber Nazar, we have Ian McCannerin, we have Nate Pike, Brent Trenholm, and Kumar Sharma. The format today is that each of the candidates will get 3 minutes to introduce themselves, say whatever they'd like to say about themselves. We've got almost 70 questions that were submitted, so thank you to everyone that submitted questions. We'll get through as many as we can. The candidates will each have 90 seconds to answer the question, and then it'll move on to the next candidate. And at the very end, each candidate will have 1 minute in order to wrap up, say anything else they'd like to say. Following the forum at 7 o'clock, candidates are welcome to meet with anyone from the public that wants to zip over and ask questions. And in addition, a number of the public school and separate school trustee candidates will also be outside in the west parking lot at Vivo. Thank you very much for everyone attending, and we'll get started right away with Jasmine.
Okay, so 3 minutes. Intro. Sorry, David? Yep. All right, so first of all, I'd just like to thank the NHC for putting this on and acknowledge that we are streaming to everyone today on Treaty 7 territory. I think the land acknowledgement is a really important aspect of truth and reconciliation, and as your elected official, it's something I'll be committed to. I'd also like to thank all of the public candidates for being here tonight, for putting your name forward. It's a big deal to run. It takes a lot of guts, and it's nice to see that Ward 3 has some really good choices. I'd also like to thank Darren Krause for live streaming today, and to everybody at home for tuning in. If you're tuning into this on your Sunday night, you represent some of the most engaged people we have in our city, and we need you right now, so thank you for taking the time to do this. I've lived in Calgary for the last 10 years. I originally came here for the same reason that a lot of folks come, and that's for opportunity. And for me, I was trying to be the best in the world at this crazy sport of Olympic wrestling, and I quickly learned that Calgary is a lot more than a sports city. We are a young, entrepreneurial city that likes to win, but at the same time is very charitable. But I think, I fell in love with that, and over the last number of years, the last 4 or 5 years especially, it has been very difficult for Calgary. We've been hit with a sort of 1-2 punch of the pandemic and also the turn in the economy. And I think that's why this city election is the most important election we will have in a generation. We need to elect people to that table who are going to collaborate and make evidence-based decisions. And I worked in both the public and private sector. I did a master's degree focused on municipal policy, which I believe is very important because everything we do at the city is policy. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to city stuff and regularly watch council. It's a lot of land use decisions. The One Calgary budget is about this thick, and we want to ensure that we're electing folks who are going to read that, do their homework, and be the expert on the issues so that you can come to them with your concerns. My mandate comes from the Ward 3 residents directly, and what I've heard, I think you're going to hear a lot tonight. It's about our infrastructure issues in Ward 3. You look at parks, recreation, libraries. We have a significant deficit where we are. I also think that safety is very important. I've knocked 10,000 doors in Ward 3, and that becomes very apparent just how many issues we have with speeding and with unsafe crosswalks. No doubt we have a transit deficit and big issues with snow clearing as well, and that's something that's across the city that I'd really like to address. I'm asking tonight to be your champion for all of those things and to work with others to accomplish them. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the fellow candidates about their vision as well and learning from them. So back to you, David.
Thank you very much. Greer.
Thank you. I'll try to follow up on that good introduction. My name is Brent. I'd like to also acknowledge that we enjoyed working together for 7 years. I just want to acknowledge that.
Speak louder.
And we've been working together on Treaty 7 months. My journey really began 10 years ago as well when I moved to Calgary from BC in search of a new phase, finding opportunities that some dream of. Fast forward 10 years, 2 kids, a married trader, role as a structural engineer, project engineer, field engineer, municipal engineer, engineering supervisor, parks and rec manager, planning and development services, and now we're in Canada. So seen in Calgary, what I've seen in Calgary the last 10 years, that offers opportunity. And that's why many come to this great city and choose to come home as I have. You know, Calgary's really at a critical junction. It's like, we really need the right people around the board ever before to step up to the council team and really guide and pivot our city forward. You know, we've come upon difficult times also with our economy and with the shift toward renewable energy, constructing our energy sector. But we also need to have the right people to carry us forward and really make us a thriving city once again. You know, I worry that, you know, it worries me that the children or students graduate and leave our city. You know, a net loss of population out here in that game. And really have to do our part as a city council. It's not all, and one thing is there's not really all of the city council showing. The city council has a huge role to play in really in reshaping our city and building the best practices in the country. You know, I've knocked over 8,000 doors in Ward 3. I've written over 600 personalized letters. I've flyers off in the spring of 20,000 houses. I've built over 50 sites in my driveway from once in the morning. You know, I work hard and to get here, and it's really, I get my job as well. It's a really difficult thing to run for office. You know, there's a lot of choices in Ward 3. So, you know, so please I ask voters to pass polls over tomorrow. Please do your homework, do your research. But the biggest thing I want to say is thank you.
Thank you. And Ian, and I'll encourage you to speak up louder. This ceiling is just drowning it away.
No problem. Hi everyone, I'm Ian McDermott. I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to talk fast. If asked, I usually say that I'm a moderate who leans fiscally responsible and socially progressive. It's easy to see why. I grew up with an ex-military father who always votes conservative, and a mother who was a flower child and was always voted in to be school. As you can imagine, I like to think independently, focus on the facts, and see both sides of the debate. A skill trait that later led me to law school and now politics. After law school, I went into the private sector, turning around failing companies, and later started my own consulting company. I've had a passion for fixing things my whole life. During all of this, I've gained a lot of experience in working between different governments, companies, and their internal bureaucracies. I've lived in Ward 3 for the last 27 years, and along with my wife Leah, raised our 3 children here. In 2013, Leah suffered a stroke and would have died if I'd been on a business trip and not home at the time. This gave me pause, and I began to focus on my home turf here in Calgary, which led me to spending a lot of time volunteering in the community. All told, I have 24 years of experience as business owner, executive, and board member, and 38 years of experience volunteering in nonprofits, 4 of which were spent as board president. Recently, I decided to continue serving the community by running for council. Now about my campaign. First, 97% of my campaign is run from my own pocket. I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is. I'm not working with or supported by any third-party advertiser, PAC, party, or other organizations. All donations are posted on the website. My 3 priorities can be summed up as make Ward 3 matter, which means fixing our transit problems, including getting the green line up here, getting needed amenities such as a medical center, dog parks, and meeting areas, and of course, fixing our snow removal issues. Second, pandemic and economic recovery. That means diversifying our economy and creating jobs, finding ways to support people who are struggling with mental health and addiction, and reducing the financial impact on low-income people. Third is build a better city. While working on recovery, we need to work on how the city itself runs. We need transparency and real engagement, not just presentations during working hours when most people can't attend. We need to switch to priority-based budgeting to make sure our taxes are spent properly, and we need to create a business-friendly environment, which means everything from reducing red tape to retaining our graduates. Most importantly, we need to end the toxic behavior on city council and collaborate with other members of council, provincial government, federal government, and the administration. A council is only 1 vote out of 14. I know how to convince other councillors to build consensus before holding a vote. This election, I hope that you'll support me in Canada, so I can support you and help me ensure your voice is heard. Thank you.
Before we go on, we've had some questions asked about the mask. So for everybody out there watching, It is a Vivo requirement that what masks must be worn at all times. We did actually just verify that to make sure. So that's the reason the masks are on. After we get through this first round of introductions, we'll try and get a little bit closer with the camera and microphone so that it's easier for everyone to hear. Nate Pike.
Municipal politics are supposed to be nonpartisan. City Hall is the last place in our democracy where elected officials are not forced to cast votes based on party lines. They have the freedom to cast votes based on what the constituents have asked for and need from them. I'll ask you to remember that. My name is Nate Pike. I'm a husband, a father, a paramedic, an advocate, and a community volunteer. I believe strongly in service. Growing up in Calgary, as far back as I can remember, my family was always active in politics. My grandfather was one of the founding members of the Reform Party, and while there were certainly many enthusiastic dinner table debates over policies of that party that I strongly disagree with, my upbringing instilled in me a view of government that was one of respect, optimism, and I'll be honest, admiration. Elected officials were people you could trust. Unfortunately, we have almost lost that most critical element of our democracy, the ability to trust the people that we choose to represent us. And we certainly can't be faulted for that. We have an overabundance of politicians and people running for office who clearly consider themselves above the rules that the rest of us are expected to live by. Non-stop, we see politicians making choices that benefit them, not the people that they are supposed to be representing. And that says nothing of the backroom wheeling and dealing that goes on. In this election, we have PACs and third-party advertisers operating in our elections to advance their own agendas. PACs that more often than not are led and organized by people who don't even live in the communities whose election they are trying to control. They are not pursuing the agendas of voters. They are buying candidates with free advertising, with pre-mobilized volunteer forces. And let's be very clear, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing this in order to try to gain control and take it away from you. We have political parties doing everything in their power from behind the curtains to gain their own control, often through those very PACs that I just mentioned. We have candidates who are trying to bring party politics to our city government, running openly with slates, but worse than that, we have many candidates who are coordinating, sharing data and strategy with other candidates and campaigns and organizations. They're just doing it more quietly. I believe that we deserve better than all of this. This is why I have been disclosing all of my donations, both names and amounts, since day one of my campaign. This is why I waited to door knock until August, because I heard from an overwhelming number of people that they weren't comfortable with it, and more importantly, it sent the wrong message at the wrong time. And for those same reasons, when numbers went back up in August, I suspended door knocking. I have not backed away from controversial topics and questions. My positions are clear, and I have done my best to answer every question asked of me, so that even if people disagree with me, they know clearly where I stand. One of the things that politicians and political strategists try to establish is something called an election question. They try to take control of what the election is about. Well, I have an election question of my own that I would like to ask every voter in Ward 3. What kind of representation do you deserve? Do you want your elected official to be the whim of other candidates or provincial parties or special interests or unions? Or do you want them to be honest with you, conduct themselves with integrity, and be accountable to you and be transparent with you? Because quite simply, that is what I want to bring to Ward 3.
For those watching through the Northern Hills Facebook page, we've had indication that the sound and picture is much better through the Livewire Calgary Facebook stream. So feel free to go to Livewire Calgary on Facebook, and you can also watch the exact same coverage there, but I'm told with much better sound. Next is Brent.
David, if I may, just
Yep.
before we continue. I think that given that all of us are running potentially to be in the leadership role in our communities, it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we're following the mask bylaws per the letter. So if I can just ask everybody to make sure that they're wearing their masks completely over the face, including their noses, please.
Noted. Brent.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate it. Change seems to be the new buzzword. Everyone says, we need change, we need change, we need change. Yet most people do not know what it is, what it means, or have never created administrative change. I believe we need a cultural change at City Hall, and one that puts communities first and not politicians. My name is Brent Trenholm. I'm a father of 3, 6 and a long-time volunteer in many, many different communities. I'm a millwright, so I've worked in the front lines, in the trenches for years, and I fixed all sorts of problems and watched what goes on administratively. I progressed up my career and ended up being general manager for service and manufacturing companies. So one was a Western Hemisphere and Russia service company. And I've been elected before. So I'm not coming at this from a green perspective, thinking it's all rosy and it's shiny and it's all great. I'm coming at this from a realistic perspective. And so from being able to go in and watch what goes on from the trenches and manage multi-million-dollar facilities and create positive cultural changes, and being elected, my background covers many different things. So I can talk about something from 3 or 4 different angles. And why am I running? I'm just tired of taxes spent and politicians or candidates talking about stuff they do not know about, and just overall, anyways, people need to run for a reason, need to have the skill set to do it, just like a job. Ward 3 has gone through some interesting leadership changes in the last 8 years, and everyone did what they thought was best. Yet here we are at the same spot. You know, my platform revolves around 3 things, but I'll say 4. Experience. I love that, administratively and life. Tax reform. Tax reform through spending restraints. We need to get our act together at City Hall. It's not their money, it's not our money. Accountability. Less in-camera meetings. And people. We're not here to create policy to do stuff that's against people. We're here to help people. And we need to get rid of policy because it's interfering with the everyday business person and family. My platform comes down to how I'm going to achieve this. And I'm not going to go and say everything we need, because I know everyone knows what it is. But mine comes down to how I'm going to do it. And my list, I will have how I'm going to do it, not just what needs to be done. The question comes down to you, the voters. If you want more of the same, you got 7 other candidates. If you want something different and something that creates change, here I am. My name is Brent Trenholm. Thank you very much.
And Kumar.
Hello, this is Kumar Sharma. I'm a broadcaster, I'm a teacher, I'm a banker, and I'm a community server for many, many years. 28 years of broadcasting and also almost 32 years in Calgary as a community server, and in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge, and I acknowledge, that I live, work, and play on the traditional territories of all people who made their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. Thank you so very much. Now, I want to talk about what I am, who I am, and why I am. I have a passion to serve, and to service the needs of Ward 3. I have a tagline in my campaign, create change. Because same old has been happening for many, many years. This ward was represented by Northeast Councillor, part of it. Some ward was represented by Northwest. We, the Central North, we were always not being at the top priority of City Council. I'm running my platform to bring financial accountability, the tax issue, spending, jobs and economy, building community, and critical community infrastructure. That includes meeting and gathering places in this ward, and a lot of other things, because God, houses, everything is missing in this ward, and we'll talk about in the next few minutes. I'm here to lower taxes for house owners and business owners. Audit of all city spending, cut red tape in city departments, oppose the guidebook and over-densification of our single-family communities. Pandemic and economic recovery is the number 1. I support tax freeze for upcoming budget period to control spending, leading to an equitable tax policy for residents and businesses. Public transportation, including the construction of LRT, the Green Line, #1 priority for majority of this board. A focus on affordable community access, community gathering spaces, including expansion, emergency medical and diagnostic services, affordable recreational, leisure, and personal welfare programs, public health schools, remote post-secondary learning institutions. There are a lot of other things which are being planned, and I'm studying very hard on those things. Public engages in the developments, including the Aurora Business Park development is #1 priority as well in this board. And I think I'm reaching out to my time limit. In the meantime, the crime and the community safety is also one of the issues in this board. I want to
Time.
time out. Thank you so very much, and we'll be talking many issues because I'm very passionate about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder again about the masks. They need to keep up over the nose. That's the bylaw requirement, so please ensure that happens. We're going to go into the question period now. Some will probably be longer and others shorter. You have 90 seconds to answer. At 20 seconds, I'll be waving this yellow paper at you to give you a heads up that you're running out of time, and then I'll be giving the T when you're out of time. The first question, these questions came from the Sandstone Community Association, who's with us here today, came from people providing feedback through a variety of community Facebook groups, our website, our own social media, so there were lots of questions. The first one is, what have you been doing for your community or Ward 3 in terms of advocating for or getting better services, amenities, and infrastructure prior to you running in the past 4 years, and why are you running based on that, and please give specifics. So we'll start with Kabir.
Rapid fire, okay. Great question, and thanks for asking it. I've really been, as I said earlier, this has been a 10-year journey, and I've really been acquiring the necessary skills, experience, and background that's the makeup of a successful city councillor. I'm a collaborator, I'm a team player, I'm an influencer, and I build solid relationships. And those are really the makeup of a good politician, but a good city councillor. I have been building these skills through my career in the various roles that I've held, and moving through the ranks, especially at Rocky View County, starting as an engineer, moving through the management teams, and really understanding different aspects of service delivery. And in the hope and in the plan of bringing it forward as a skill to me or an asset to me, but more so an asset to the city of Calgary and the residents of Ward 3. I think the second part of the question was, why am I running? And, our city needs the right people now more than ever. More so, they need our generation to step up and take control of our future. As I said, I've been building the necessary skills to come here and make a run, and that's why I'm sitting here in front of you today as the Ward 3 council candidate in this upcoming civic election.
Thank you, and Ian.
There's a good chance you've seen me around before because I've been extremely busy in the community. I've been a member of the NHCA for the last 4 years, and I've been president up until just recently this April. And through them, I did a ton of work in the community. Everything from delivering food to people with food insecurity, to cleaning up the neighborhood, to running soccer programs, and everything else. In addition to the approximately 2,000 hours I've spent at the NHCA, I actually added that up. It's been about 2,000 hours. I also donated time to Northern Hills Connect, which helps start up businesses in the area and provide support for them. I helped paint the mural. I went and not protested, but demonstrated for the high school and attended City Hall in order to push that through. I've been very, very active in the community, and actually the reason I want to run is a continuation of that. I think that this is just the next step to becoming a full member of the community is by basically continuing from my community work to councillor.
Thank you. Dave?
So the first question was, what have I been doing in the community? And there's been, quite frankly, a lot. I was also a member of the NHCA board, and I was very proud to have served that time with the board. One of the biggest issues that I was most passionate about was the high school in North Calgary. I'm proud of the fact that I was able to attend multiple rallies over the years. And when I ran for provincial government in 2019, I actually made that a centerpiece of my campaign because I wanted to make sure that it was a topic that didn't fall through the cracks. I have organized a Snow Angels program that makes sure that seniors and disabled people are able to get in and out of their houses safely for the last 5 or 6 years now. My wife and my family initiated a little free pantry program inside of Coventry Hills to address food insecurity. I got to be really clear, I'm not taking all of the credit for that by any stretch. There are amazing volunteers that have stood up to back that up. In my work as a paramedic, I advocate for the people of Ward 3 all the time because this is the main area that I work, but I also do a lot of public education work within EMS, and I have sat on the board for the EMS Foundation as well, trying to raise public awareness about public health issues. I have a long history of advocacy both within the community and outside of the community, and in regards to the questions, why am I running? I believe we're at a pivotal point in our democracy. Things are more polarized than ever, and I fundamentally believe that we deserve better if we demand it.
Thank you. Brent?
What have I done? Oh, good Lord. I'm from Calgary, BC, and I've coached hockey, ball. I've refereed kids' sports for years. I don't know how many years, but it's been too many. I've ran many associations as treasurer, president as well. And when I moved to Alberta, I was involved in a lot of charity work up in northern Alberta, where I started my own fitness business. I'm a personal trainer as well. And down in Edmonton for a while, and did some volunteering there as well. And then in Calgary, I was a member of the Hidden Valley Community Association board. I was their communications guy, and there's a story that goes behind that. And I also built a library, because I'm a pretty handy guy with my hands. I don't know, 2 by 3 foot library for people to put books in and to share them. And why am I running? Over the years, I've watched a lot of politics, and I watched a lot of candidates and what have you. And what I see most lacking is people with real experience. Now, everyone can talk that we can do this in hopes and dreams, but have you ever done it before? And what I have is that actual experience and proof that I have created change and lowered costs and increased productivity in every business that I've ever ran.
Thank you. Kumar?
Hello, I've been asked what have I done in last 32 years since I've been in Calgary. I came to Calgary from India when I was at the age of 26 in 1989. And since then, in 1995, I've been a broadcaster and on the radio and television, and I'm a business owner in the ward. I raised my family in Panorama Hills. My sons are 32, 29, and 27 years of age, and they are also business professionals. I understand business. I understand budgeting, taxation. That's what it needs in the city of Calgary. And also, having said that, I have been a very strong advocate in most of the community associations, and in particular, North Calgary Cultural Association that sits in this Vivo Center every Friday. I was very instrumental in setting up the NCCA in 2009. I've been an executive director and board member also in that association. I've been working with many other charities for a number of years, and now since I've been told that Kumar, you can bring a change. I have a passion to serve and service the needs of Calgarians. I have door knocked, my team and I will door knock almost 20,000 homes in Ward 3, and that's why you see most of my long signs on private properties. Because people have told me all their concerns, I've noted down. As soon as I become city councillor, I will be acting on them. Thank you so very much.
Justin?
Okay, well, well, thank you all so much for that overview. It's really nice to see all the different ways that we've been involved in the community. It probably comes as no surprise that I have been highly involved in the sports sector. I really care about getting young kids active, and sport and recreation, I think, is something, it has the power to really unite and connect communities and change people's lives. Been running camps and coaching, trying to make sport more accessible. I've also been a mentor for 8 years with the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Calgary, and I know I will talk a lot about big system challenges that we have, but the most impactful work I've done, honestly, has been in that one-on-one capacity with youth right where we live. I've also served on national boards and really advocated to try and put Calgary on the map to host national championships, and some of the work I'm most proud of is really pushing for the Wrestling National Championships to be at the Sportsplex at the Tsuut'ina First Nation. This is actually fulfilling one of the calls to action in the White Goose Flying Report. That is to have our Indigenous partners host sporting events and to celebrate Indigenous history. I've also been involved with Ask for YYC, trying to encourage more women to take leadership roles in our community. And I will work very hard and closely with our community associations, who I think have done tremendous work. We're very responsive to the needs, and work in City Council to get more resources for the things that we need here. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Ian. The question is, what do you believe the top 3 issues are in Ward 3 that people are most concerned about?
The top 3 issues, to be honest, depends on who you talk to. Everybody has their own thing, but the main ones in my head are first off, the Green Line. Not just the Green Line, but transit in the area. It's no good to have a Green Line if it still takes you 2.5 hours to get to work. We need to have a good transit system that gets people to where they need to go. That's the first one. The second one is amenities. We are missing a lot of amenities. We've had a medical center on the books for like 20 years, and it's still, we have 2 spots to put it in, and we still don't have one. We have no dog parks to speak of, no real gathering places to speak of. Snow removal is a major issue for a lot of the residents I've talked to. And most importantly, accessibility and traffic safety is a real issue. A lot of people are speeding through communities and endangering children there. And in addition, if you live in Ward 3, you probably don't live on a house that has a sidewalk in front of it. Imagine actually being in a wheelchair or otherwise having problems with accessibility. So all of these are some of the top issues that I see in the ward.
Thank you. Nate?
Well, fortunately, the City of Calgary did a study a little while back that established exactly what the 3 biggest issues were that Ward 3 residents are concerned about. At 26%, there's infrastructure, traffic, and roads. At 20%, it's transit, and undoubtedly a big part of that is the Green Line. And 16% is crime, safety, and policing. But overarching all of that, I really do fundamentally believe that one of the biggest things that I've heard consistently from people over and over again is they do not feel like they can trust their elected officials. They feel like their elected officials engage in theater, they feel like they engage in spin, and they don't feel like they can believe what they're saying. And that's the biggest issue that I want to work to address.
Thank you. Brent?
Over the last year, now I've been campaigning for a 1.5 years, and I've been to over 40,000 doors, and my team and I have dropped over 100,000 pieces of literature. And we've been working very, very hard, and in the last 6 months, I've knocked on 19,000 doors myself. And what I hear is taxes and spending is up at the very top. People are losing everything. And I would agree with what Ian is saying about amenities. This ward is it's disgusting what's going on. And transit is the other one that people need to get to where they got to go. Here we have 2 new communities, Carrington and Livingston, and they have to send their kids to school in a taxi cab, and they got to pay for it themselves. And any elected official that would allow that to happen should retire and move away, because we're here to help our kids. And if you're going to allow, well, it just shouldn't happen. It's disgusting. So, anyways, but I have on my survey, on my flyer that people are getting, there's a whole list of things, from spending, accountability, political rhetoric, roads and sewer, green line, it's never going to get here unless something changes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Kumar?
I've door knocked, like I said, almost over around 20,000 homes myself, and I have gone from Livingston, Carrington, all the way down to the communities in the south, in the Ward 3. The majority of the people, they want financial accountability at City Hall. They want our expenditure control, expenses control. They want community infrastructures. They want affordable access, community gathering places in this community. When you go to Harvest Hill, they have different issues. When you go to Panorama Hills, there are totally different issues. But at the same time, people want an effective snow clearing action plan. We call snow removal. That's not a snow removal. We never remove snow. We should be calling snow cleaning, or at least start removing snow. Or at the same time, people are concerned about crime and safety in Livingston. So these are the major issues. Jobs and economy is also coming every door almost. And that's where it is that the city is spending. It's out of control. We need to control spending. We need to maximize our expenditures, and we need to start working on zero-based budget.
Thank you. Jasmine?
I think we've heard a lot of great points from the fellow candidates about some of the issues that we have. So I'm not going to rehash them. I'm just going to talk about how I think we can address some of these things. In terms of infrastructure, things like parks, recreation centers, and libraries, it's very hard at the City of Calgary to put anything into the public realm. If you talk to community associations about the advocacy that they've tried to do, whether that's getting new arenas in an area, or if you look up in Carrington and Livingston, increasingly the city pushes developers to put fences around any amenities. So you have a great Livingston hub, but no one can access that. In Carrington, there's a skate park there, and that's something that actually everyone can go and utilize, which is so important for the community. It's actually very hard to get those things approved, and so I think we need some regulatory flexibility there from the city. I also think from the crosswalks and seating perspective, we're really the victims of some poor planning decisions, and from the 80s and 90s, we have very wide roads. We have increasingly bigger population. It's going to be hard for us to fix those very easily, but that's retrofitting is the option that we have right now. I will champion that. I also think that we have to think about transit going to places other than downtown. And so I'll really look at the data and figure out how we can make sure that we get our university students, for example, to where they need to go. East-west travel is something we really need to sort out here. Thanks.
Thank you. Kabir?
Thank you. And I think the candidates here have outlined pretty well the issues that we've been hearing are current in our ward. The number one issue, the number one theme I've heard of the doors, and we're knocking over 8,000 doors and being set in the parks all summer, has been responsible spending, and the need for a change at City Hall. Residents, the city is a massive organization, and a lot of service areas, over 60 service areas. And our community sees money being spent on wasteful things like the Blue Ring, the traveling light, the monument near, other monument that was built near the Beaufort Road interchange. People have expressed the need to spend responsibly. The second major thing I've heard is taxes and rising taxes. Taxes have gone up about 70% of single family homes in this ward since 2015. Taxes have gone up by average 86% from businesses since that same time. People want to see taxes be stabilized. People are saying we will cut taxes, zero-based budgets. It's actually a bunch of BS, I'll be honest. Being a municipal manager, putting budgets in front of council and defending them, zero-based budgets are basically regressive. The last thing I've heard is reliable transit and the need for it, whether better busing and being able to get to a destination in a reasonable amount of time and all the longer looking than our Green Line project. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Nate. The question is, and you've all pretty much addressed it already, is there's a well-known lack of services and infrastructure in the North Central Corridor. Ward councillors should advocate to make our communities the best they can be. We need less development in Ward 3 and more enhancing the things we have to be a sustainable community. How do you envision that?
Well, I think you summed it up right there quite nicely. I don't even know if there was a question in it, but I'll do my best to take a crack at it. The reality is that there was a lot of political hay that was made over the guidebook. The guidebook was just that, a guide. And it really emphasized the fact that we have to increase density in areas where it's appropriate. And I really want to highlight again that when we're talking about the guidebook and that increased densification, the same community engagement pieces that have always existed still would exist. So it was really something that got turned into a bit of a tempest in a teapot from everything that I could see, because we do need to increase densification. We have a chronic problem in this city where we have a tendency of trying to build outward to expand our tax base, but as we've seen in Ward 3, we suffer from a lack of basic infrastructure when that happens, and we have to stop trying to keep building our tax base by building out. We have to get caught up and give the communities the amenities that they need, and that, quite frankly, they were promised when those communities were built.
Thank you. Brent?
Same as Nate, it's kind of you answered your own question. Where I'm at is, right now we have a administrative planning process where it goes top down, and the administrators have their favorite politicians, and they pass things like the guidebook, and without real consultation with their wards. And the high density is important. In '93, we started the skinny house thing to get high density up there. But it has a problem in its own right. And you can look at the golf course at Harvest Hills, and someone who wanted to sell it, and that community's already kicked off. And we have up in the northern corner of Panorama. I'm not too look. Anyways, and there's a high density area there, and people are complaining about the traffic. So, and then council and some people want to make narrow roads and put more people in there and take away the green space. And this is the kind of stuff that just shouldn't be happening. And we need to have a very good look at how, and the best thing to do, and this is where I believe in community-based planning. From the bottom up, where you take the problem, you talk to your community, and then you go to City Hall.
Thank you. Kumar?
But a city councillor should go to city council not to fight among each other, to work with each other. And that's where my expertise lies. I work with people, and this is how we need in this community. And I strongly oppose the defunding of police as well. Proudly stand beside and advocate this support for all our first responders from Ward 3. And I want to significantly reduce in-camera closed door meetings. I require the City Finance Department to publish quarterly budget to ensure public oversight of management of city finance and everything. People in Ward 3 have told me that there is a huge deficit in infrastructure. Some work has been done by the past councillors, but not enough at all. There's a lot of work to be done, and since I say that I have a passion to serve and service the community, I strongly propose that we all should work together and on October 18th, create a change in Ward 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jasmine?
So I think we should start by saying that I don't think Ward 3 residents are asking for anything special. They're simply just asking for the same services that you see in all other wards. And I've heard Ian speak about the city's allocation on the Quadrant system has been part of the reason why we've been a victim of being overlooked in terms of some of our services. So investments going northeast or far northwest, but we're north central. That's part of it, but I also think the reason why we continue to see a lack of services up here and investment is also related to space. I mean, we're very, very squeezed, even trying to find a dog park, a suitable place for that. I know that is something we're really low on. It's very difficult to do. I know that work has been done by many folks on that. I'm going to push for the smart redevelopment and retrofits in the places that make sense. I am very supportive of the mobile ways that we provide services. So the way that Vivo goes out and does Play Hub, we can't bring everyone to our centralized recreation center, so we have to get out there. Working really hard on our traffic congestion issues as well. I don't think that it's going to be simple. I think that a lot of the challenges we face in Ward 3 are often structural, which is not easy for anyone to just come in and change. That's why we haven't, I think, seen the change that we could. But my commitment to you is to always fight for the change that we can make. So thank you.
Thank you. Greer.
Before I start, David, can you repeat the question?
There's a well-known lack of services and infrastructure in the North Central Corridor. Ward councillors should advocate to make our communities the best they can be. We need less development in Ward 3 and more enhancing the things we do have to be a sustainable community. How do you envision that?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, Ward 3 is basically a small, it contains small communities. They're all master plan communities that were developed over the course of 30 years. And we're continuing to develop to the north with our community, Livingston and Carrington. Traditionally, in a city like Calgary that's built like that and is developed in that manner, a development proponent comes and develops the community, builds the amenities, and keeps moving on. And very little of the views are seeing further enhancements or further investment from the city. Some of our communities are reaching 25 years old. We need to have an influential and loud voice at City Hall that advocates and lobbies for improvements and enhancements in our communities, whether it be transit, whether it be recreation, whether it be our roads and transit. We need to really have a voice that really pushes, who really advocates for our residents well, and moves us forward. But a big reason is the sprawling nature of Calgary and the desirability of the way Calgary is built and develops. I always say sales speak for themselves, and I have a lot of family who lives in the new community of Carrington, Livingston, and love living there. So density, and when it comes to density is best where it's most appropriate, where it's tolerable, and where it's serviceable. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian.
So, reading the guidebook was actually quite interesting. I was actually reminded, based on my background in law, of the Canadian Charter of Rights. The Canadian Charter of Rights is just this generic, nice-sounding document, but it doesn't give you any details on what happens if my religious rights interfere with your gender rights or any of those other things. That was left for the courts to all decide. And what the City of Calgary did was they created this beautiful document on how to create new communities, didn't put as much thought into how to fix old communities, and then completely left out the whole how do we solve all of these problems and issues that happen because it's a general document and it's aspirational and inspirational as opposed to very detailed. And that created a lot of problems with communities because they would look at it and go, well, technically you could do this terrible thing to our community with this document. And there was no guidance on whether or not that would actually happen. So it was poorly rolled out. It should have had more details involved in it in exactly the same way that our charter does. It's really good for new developments, but for existing developments, the concept of just density is, in my opinion, ill-advised. We do need new amenities, especially in our area. I've already gone over a bunch of them. One of the problems with density is, oh wow, okay.
Thank you. The next question will start with Brent. There's a lot of concern that the Green Line will not cross the Bow River unless there's money left over from phase 1. What is your position on the Green Line and how do you intend to advocate pushing the line northward?
For starters, I think the Green Line in today's fashion is a waste of money. It's going to the south, to Shepherd Industrial Area, which is great. It goes through a small community and goes into town. And if we're lucky, it might even come across the river. And it also has a bad design in the train system. So they use a different train, and it goes 60 kilometers an hour, not 80. And so now, from an operational perspective, you increase your costs because now you need to have a warehouse full of parts for a different thing. So use the WestJet example when they started their business. They had all 737s, cheap parts, all the same thing, easy to do business. I believe that they should have done is taken the blue line over the airport and brought it into Ward 3 and go into town. But the political will and the land sales of past pushed it south. And so nothing can be done about that. I also understand that where we're at right now with the Green Line, it's a done deal. What's happening, and you're going to have $5.5 billion sitting in the middle of nowhere, and people won't be able to access it. and going underground into the city, it's just a bad plan. Anyone that understands engineering and operations will understand this. And so, but this community needs transit. Like I said about Carrington and Livingston, they need proper transit. And Panorama and Harvest Hills, same thing. They need transit.
Mark?
Transportation has been one of the main issues here in Calgary and in Ward 3 of Calgary. And I have said on numerous occasions, and I strongly say that as soon as I become a city councillor, I want to be the chairperson of the Transportation and Priorities Committee so that I can investigate as to what happened when provincial government gave the money, federal government gave the money, city got the money, and the green line was supposed to go from far north to far south, and something switched. And I talked to one of the green line managers at the doors in Hidden Valley, and he told me that there's a lack of MSP. And I said, I mean, there's a lot of land here. Why can't we have a better connectivity of airport to the downtown? City says we don't have enough money, probably after, no, city doesn't say, but I'm saying that there probably is not enough money left over after the LRT crosses the river. I want to investigate all that. I think this project can be salvaged, and we will be very optimistic that we can salvage this project.
Thank you. Jasmine?
So I just want to say very clearly that I think the Green Line is the most important infrastructure project in Calgary, not just Ward 3, full stop. And I will be an unapologetic champion for Green Line to the north. In our community, you talk to people about Green Line, and there's a huge frustration because people have been waiting for this project forever. And it continues. The folks up in Livingston and Carrington, the developer really pushed very hard in the sales of those communities that we're going to have Green Line to the north. And I think it's one of the most important things I will do is advocate for that project. When I think there's also the provincial and federal buy-in that we've had that money, I refuse to leave that on the table when I know that that could go to helping residents who live here. In terms of phase 2 and what it's going to take, we have to get bus rapid transit working well up Center Street. I think the first thing that's going to happen in a year from now around council tables, we're going to say, oh, you know what, it's just easier for us to go south. And if that is the conversation that's happening, then we will have failed, because we have to show that we can come north, we have the ridership, we have the desire, we have the ability to make it happen, and that will be one of my first orders of business.
Thank you. Your beer.
Yeah, I think Jasmine stole the first sentence I was going to say too. She's right. The Green Line is the single most important project for North Central Calgary, full stop. That's exactly what I was going to say. $5.5 million. This project was thought of 20 years ago. And the reason it's not coming up north, I'll be very honest, is a lack of leadership and pull from previous councillors. There's a southbound train from the beginning. And the provincial funding that was on the table that has been now funded for this project, there was politics involved, but they also questioned where this train was going. And it's clearly the contingency of the south leg coming under budget before it goes over the Bull River was to basically ensure that the train does go somewhere. And for city officials and city staff who build the project, for them to keep the project as best they can under budget. Having worked on big projects, $5.5 billion projects are never on budget. Simple as that, full stop. We have to lobby very hard internally, but more so lobby in Edmonton, our provincial government, but also in Ottawa, the federal government, because we know that these projects are not built by only civic dollars. They require the buy-in of also our provincial and federal governments. And I'll be a huge advocate and lobbyist for the Green Line.
Thank you. Ian.
I hate going last because everybody has great answers before that. I want to build off of Gerber's comment on needing to work together with other levels of government. I would love to think that we are going to come under budget on stage 1, and then we'll be able to just continue on. The perfect answer would be finish stage 1 and already be ready and have everything in place and just continue on to stage 2. It would cost us money to dismantle everything, send everybody away, and then have to rebuild it all over again. So that's the perfect answer. So what's needed is to build a really strong relationship with the province and the and federal government to make sure that should we need extra funding, I really hope we don't, but should we need that, that they will step up and help us with accomplishing that goal.
Thank you. And Dave.
Yeah, good news, you're not last.
There's a couple of things I want to address right out of the gates here. First of all, I'm not sure why we have some people advocating for the Green Line going to the airport, because last time that I checked, the airport was not inside the Ward 3 boundaries. There's no question that Ward 3 requires much better transit infrastructure. Transit lifts people up. Not only does it lift people up and equalize people, but it also provides a significant foothold on addressing issues like greenhouse gases and climate change. That's one of the reasons. The reality is, though, we're not going to see a train up here anytime soon. That's one of the reasons why I put forward a plan to make sure that we get a BRT Max line going up Centre Street, which we don't need the land acquisition on the south side of Centre Street, south of Beddington, immediately. We can put that in place very, very quickly, and if we design and build it intelligently, that actually creates a stronger business case with that infrastructure for getting the train out here quicker.
Thank you. Kumar will answer the next question first. This year, the city allocated $2 million for artificial turf at Genesis Center, $32 million for a Northeast Regional Fieldhouse in Skyview, and $25 million for a Northeast Athletic Park in Saddle Ridge, but nothing in the North Central Ward 3. Would you support changing the city's use of the Quadrant system for allocating resources to a different model?
And this question, they have the person who asked the question, they picked up the favorite question that I have, the answer that I have that I've been saying at the doors. The city has been allocating money in the 4 quadrants: northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. And because this ward until 2017 was part of Ward 5, some of the couple of communities, and also the money that went to northeast quadrant that goes to the northeast people, which are very good people as well, and we are all together at the same time. The money that gets allocated into Northwest, they also get used in Egmont and all those other areas. We are called North Central. I hate to say that we are different, but we are different. And at the same time, as soon as I become a councillor, I am going to advocate that this North Central should have its own money allocation so that we can invest in meeting gathering places, dog houses, park houses, field houses, adult entertainment, children's entertainment, and playgrounds, green spaces and everything. This ward needs its own identification. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jasmine.
So the simple answer is yes. I definitely would work towards getting away from the quadrant structure of how we allocate resources. I think that the city has focused far too much on that, and it's sort of like a way of checking a box to say that we've made investments everywhere, but it's in fact not equitable. We see deep investments going far northeast or far northwest, and we're overlooked in North Central. I think that's partially related to the spacing issues that we have, which no councillor, no one running here is spontaneously going to be able to just make that go away. That doesn't mean that we can't be advocating in the spaces that we do. I mean, it's already been mentioned about not having an urgent care center. We have land that can be developed for community associations. There's things that we absolutely can be doing. And I think it's about making evidence-based decisions and the case, the sort of business case that for our residents and showing that inequity to the rest of your councillors. At the end of the day, you have to be able to count to 8 on everything we do at the city. And so how am I going to do that? It's going to not be through policy. It's going to be through relationships that I'm building with other people and being able to work across different lines and ensure that I can get what's best for us by making the case to my colleagues that we really need to move forward with some of these improvements.
Thank you. Kabir.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the city did contribute about $23 million towards the Levo expansion, so there were recreational funds given to Ward 3. But I'll be honest, the projects that you listed off, David, that are being built and some are recently completed in the Northeast, is a result of an influential and hardworking councillor. And that's really what we need in Ward 3 to continue to advocate for recreational amenities and other amenities as well. You know, one thing I've seen in, I've noticed about Calgary lacks high performance sport facilities. You know, we live in a winter city. It's winter here 8 months of the year. And really, we need to do our part of the city to foster sport. Get our youth and all ages to...
Attention everyone, the pool will be closing in 30 minutes.
The pool stay open longer.
The pool will be closing in 30 minutes. The gym will be closing in 1 hour. The gym will be closing in 1 hour. Thank you.
Don't worry, I stopped the clock.
We need our pool and gyms to be open longer so we can actually go and work out after normal weekend. But it's a really, for me, recreation is a huge aspect of municipal service delivery in which we have to continue to invest and foster it within our communities. And whether it be, you know, Calgary is popular for ice-based sports and winter sports. Obviously, we live in a winter city, so we have to continue to invest in that. But also turf-based and field-based sports as well.
Thank you. Ian.
The quadrant system has been annoying me for quite some time. Ward 3 is very unique in that we are, first off, the smallest ward in the city, and second, we are the only ward that is bisected straight down the middle by our quadrant system. So we are getting hit with this quadrant system far more than any other ward in the city. What ends up happening, as has been mentioned, is if you start allocating funds based on the quadrants, we're at the edge of 2 different quadrants, so we end up never getting the attention that we normally should get. I would strongly advocate either switching to a 6-quadrant system, which includes the center, but to be honest, I'd rather just get rid of the quadrant system at all. Just allocate funds based on need and based on data, not based on some sort of a grid system, nobody in Calgary uses a grid system anymore. Like, none of our neighborhoods are on a grid system. We should be running our budgets based on a grid system.
Thank you. Nate.
Yeah, it's hard to really add. Going last, or almost last, does sound a little bit. So the things I want to say, yeah, the quadrant system needs to be addressed. There's no question of that. I think that Gerger raised some excellent points, particularly the investment in Vivo, because I think that needs to not be overlooked. I think it's also worth noting with all of the investment that happened in that particular ward, it's almost as if there was a federal election recently. So I think that there's a lot of different factors that can influence that thing. I do think that it's really important that city administration understands exactly the challenges that we have in Ward 3. And I do want to give props to our current councillor who has done a good job of bringing people up here and taking them on tours, and that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to continue to do so that the people who are making these decisions from an administrative standpoint have the ability to understand just exactly what the need is and why it is that way.
Thank you. And Brent.
This was a complete political decision. Most people know it, so be it. In the quadrant system, where I'm at, people talk about we need to do stuff, we need to do stuff, we need to do stuff. And then we throw band-aid solutions on stuff. Where I'm at is I want to solve the problem. So we have this system right now, so why don't we take the border on the northeast and northwest to Deerfoot and have the northeast have theirs, and we would get, because they're using our numbers right now, and we put those numbers back into where we're at, and it makes our numbers look better. So I'm a solution-based guy. And I also think that wards should be given budgets, and so that they can have, and work with their people and create solutions, and what will do work with them. So it's a dog park, tennis court, or what have you. And recreation is key to this whole thing. And as an athlete, competitive athlete, a personal trainer, and father and grandfather, we need to have enough recreational facilities that kids can stay active. Little feet.
Our next question will start with Jasmine. We keep hearing we're the lowest tax city in Canada, and private recreation facilities that charge much more than city facilities. What is your plan to address increasing fees and taxes?
So this is a great point. There's a variety of ways that cities fund things. So user fees is one, that's like a transit ticket that you pay to utilize something. Regulatory charges are another that just goes like things like business licensing that goes towards financing the scheme of regulating that business. And then of course we have property taxes. And one of the reasons why cities often elect for user fees is because it's the way to put the person who's using the particular amenity closest to the cost, rather than charging everybody for something that they may or may not use. This is actually something that's rampant across Alberta. We see more user fees used in this province than we do in many other provinces, and I've done work in this area. I think that user fees are important, but we also have to be providing relief for the folks who might be utilizing our services in a high capacity because they need them, but don't actually shouldn't be as responsible for paying for them. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of seniors who are on a fixed income, and they need to utilize our services. But if we have the high user fees, it's going to be difficult for them, which is one of the reasons I want to look into providing some relief for seniors on their green bins and black bins and recycling. Most of our seniors use very little of their bin. They're not contributing as much to our waste, but they actually pay the same as a family does. And so that's one of the things that I would like to do to provide some relief for user fees.
Thank you. Greer.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Municipalities legally only have 3 ways to gain revenue, as Jeff mentioned. Jeff mentioned. User fees, property taxes, and intergovernmental transfers. Those are 3 ways municipalities fund their operation. And then every budget cycle, the expenditures must equal their expenses. The revenues, sorry. User fees are a way for municipalities to recoup the money and the user pay model. But the user fee needs to be reasonable, which it doesn't have create a barrier to entry. Whether it be a recreational facility, whether it be a development permit, whether it be a building permit, business license, you name it. We need to ensure that our fees are reasonable, that they are not barriers for our residents not to do business in the city of Calgary. But we also need to do, one of the biggest things that part of this question was our taxes, and what do we do about our general property taxes. Property tax is the most visible form of tax in this country. There's really one key thing that we need to do to keep our taxes low, is to build up our industrial and commercial tax base. Legally, the Municipal Government Act allows municipalities to charge the rate for non-resident properties 5 times of a residential property. So we are committed to cut red tape, make our process more efficient, promote Calgary at an international level, to bring in business to our city, helping keep that Calgary advantage, and keep taxes low for residents, and continue keeping taxes low for future generations to come.
Thank you. Ian.
So user fees it's hard to not call them a tax, even though they're not. I remember one time I was working in a jurisdiction and I saw the person's water bill, and their water bill was $4. And then they had like 7 or 8 different user fees depending on like where they were, and it ended up being like $144 from a $4 water bill, just because of all the user fees and everything else. It's hard not to call that a type of a tax if it's just a very focused tax on a certain area. At the end of the day, how much of your money is going to the government is really what a tax is. So one of the problems with that is that it's good to, in many cases, have a user fee because you're able to focus on the people who are actually using the service. But sometimes that creates a barrier to entry where you'll have somebody who needs to use that facility or amenity and can't because because the burden is being placed unfairly to them. In some cases, just based on where they live, as opposed to anything having to do with them being a heavy user. So we need to. The best way to do it is basically increase our tax base, especially to commercial, and build that up. And the wider your tax base, the lower your taxes.
Thank you. Nate?
So there's a couple pieces here for me. The first one is in regards to the user fees. I don't think it's unreasonable that if I, as an individual who makes roughly $100,000 a year through the different jobs that I have, if I pay a higher amount of my income towards fees than somebody who's making, say, $20,000 or $25,000 a year, I accept that as part of the responsibility, and it's part of how our taxation system exists in Canada already. We have mechanisms within the City of Calgary to make sure that we're providing access to services for people who do have limited financial needs, whether we're talking about seniors, whether we're talking about people with low income. That model exists very well within the transit system, and there's absolutely no reason why that shouldn't be expanded out to other areas. One of the other things that we can potentially look at for property taxes is having a conversation with the province about the 40% of our property taxes that currently get clawed back for provincial use. Calgary is facing an economic recovery from both COVID as well as an economic downturn, and I think it's perfectly valid to have a conversation about adjusting that number for the short term so that we can do the rebuilding that we need to do. I'm not convinced that putting the emphasis on commercial property taxes is the right thing to do, because that's exactly what got us in the bad situation that we were in 2 years ago.
Thank you. Brent?
Taxes and user fees. A lot of these user fees used to be in taxes, and politicians thought that it was easier to take them out and disguise them as a fee. I'm not going to go on about all of the amount of them, but they're part of it. The city still needs to provide a service, and if you give people a minimal charge, at least they respect it instead of getting everything for free. I'm going to address what Nate just said about the province and negotiating with them. And yeah, we should be talking with the province about our fair share and stuff, but if we go claw back money from the province who's already broke, that money's going to come from education and healthcare. That's the only way you can take it out, right? So I also believe that, and others talked about seniors rebates, and I think that that's really important. And there's only one taxpayer. So where I'm at is that I think we should sell the generation component of NMAX, take that $1 billion, pay down some debt. It will reduce some user fees, so the NMAX bill will be lower, because every time you get a loan, your fees go up. And when they bought that part in Maine, New York, some nuclear waste sites come in for that. And if that line goes down, Calgary's on the hook for it. So we should focus more on our own province than somewhere else.
Thank you. Kumar?
City of Calgary is a corporation, and we councillors, we should be the board of directors, and we should be working for our residents and who have always complained. And since I've grown up a lot in Ward 3, and people have told me that yes, we have to pay user fees because the city has to collect some money. Our previous premier, late Jim Prentice, tried to introduce some user fees when he had a comment about look at the mirror. User fees are required, but then at the same time, we need to audit all city spending. Cut red tape in city department so that our fees should match the services that we provide. Our fees are going up, people say, but the services are not matching to that. City's core plan is to provide core services, and that's where it should be. I know we have to charge user fees, but they should be equal to the services provided according to how the city is growing. We need a city that moves. We need a smarter city. We are going to build a smarter city. We already are a great city.
Thank you. Our next question will start with the rear. What is your position on transparency versus hundreds of in-camera meetings our current council has had?
Great question. So I'll start by saying, under the Point Act, which is a provincial act, there are some items that are required to go in camera. As a municipal employee, I've been in camera meetings with our council in various matters, and personnel, financial, things like that. I do find it odd, again, looking at the city of Calgary as a citizen, the number of closed door meeting sessions that they do have. So, one thing, should I be a councillor, or should I be elected and be the councillor here in Ward 3, I would push, should items not be legally required to go in camera, that we debate them and discuss them in a public forum, whether it be a committee meeting, whether it be a general council meeting. But to all listeners of this Q&A and this debate, there is a legal act that the city is legally required to follow on the Point Act, and all decisions and all in-camera meetings shall follow that act. But And for transparency's sake, it's important for us as council. One of the most important things that we do as council is communicate with our constituents. One thing that I commit to do as a councillor is I will communicate to the best of my ability, whether it be town halls, my social media platforms, the news. It's our responsibility to keep our residents in the know so that they understand the happenings and working at City Hall.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, so, the city of Calgary spends more time in camera or secret meetings than almost any other city in Canada. We spend upwards of 25%, where the normal is somewhere between 3 to 5%. Mayor Nenshi has said specifically on camera that he likes to be in camera because he can talk more freely. I think that's the wrong attitude to have. I think that the only things that should be in camera are things that are legally required to be in camera. Yes, of course, you want to talk about HR issues or contract negotiations in camera because you don't want to be telling somebody how much you're willing to pay for something like that. But outside of those legally required items, everything should be out in the open and available to the citizens who are affected by this.
Thank you. Hey.
I think Ian said that, and really, there's hardly an answer to give to this question at this point. I think that the comment that Ian made about Mayor Nenshi finds that it's more comfortable to speak in camera. Boy, who are you holding yourself accountable to is all that I can think there. I think transparency is absolutely critical. It's one of the things that I've heard from a lot of people that they want to see more of. And again, I think that how we behave in this campaign largely is a good indicator for what kind of behavior we'll have as councillors. And again, I'll say this is why I've been disclosing all of my donations, all of my names since day one as I received them. But I totally agree with everybody who's said that if it's a legal requirement, obviously it needs to be in camera. But if it's not a legal requirement, then it should not be in camera.
Thank you. Brent?
I was elected in '93, and I spent about 10 years in the political system. So I'm directly in these in-camera meetings and out-camera. And we as the councillors made it a point to make sure what Ian said, that HR, negotiations, and other such things go in there. What happens now, when people go in camera, there's bullying going on, and discussions going on that people they won't say in public, so we don't know who they are. So these in-camera meetings need to be stopped. And this is more of the information. It's actually, we have more in-camera meetings than most big, well, about 3 of the big cities altogether. So, but accountability starts with that. If you don't have, get more stuff out in the public so people can see what's going on, how can you be held accountable? People need to hear your conversations. All of them. And not just the ones you want them to hear.
Thank you. Kumar?
In my opening statement, I have very clearly mentioned that I want to reduce significantly the in-camera closed-door meetings. Because Ward 3 residents are sending me as a councillor, they're paying for my job. Why should I be talking in closed camera meetings? Unless there are some terms and conditions in some kind of contract that we need to talk about. That should not be more than 0.5% of the meeting. I will encourage all councillors, as soon as I become a councillor, to not have any closed-door meeting. We should be reducing all in-camera meetings, and we require City Finance Department to publish quarterly budget to ensure public oversight of all the management of city finance. And in closed meetings, in camera meetings, no.
Thank you. Desmond?
I think accountability and transparency is very important, and I think some of the challenges we have at the city right now are we do have too many in-camera meetings. I agree that we should only be doing that if it's legally required by the Act. I think it's also incumbent on councillors to let their citizens know what's coming up, right? And nowadays we have the technology to do this. You can pick up your phone and say, hey, I'm going in today to vote on the pet law bylaw, or that's what's coming up next week. Send me your thoughts. Too often I think we operate in this way, like, oh, if you have anything to say to your councillor, make sure that you send them an email. call 311. That's not actually the way that a lot of people interact nowadays. I think you have to get directly to people and have the technology to do that. Live streaming, just like events like this, goes a long way. And as a counselor, that's something I would really want to do. The other thing that I think is so important to accountability, and it doesn't get talked about enough, is the city has spent tons of money on different plans. You look at Resilient Calgary, Calgary Cultural Plan, White Goose Flying Report. Do you know where we're at with any of these plans? No, you don't. And what I will do when I'm elected is commission a stoplight report on many of these things. Like White Goose Flying is a very good example. You know, here's red. These are the things that we haven't started. Yellow for all the things that are in progress. Green for all of the things we've accomplished. Because I think we also need to celebrate what the city is doing well when we are making progress. And I also don't think we've done a good job of telling people what those things are.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Ian. And the question is, what is your position on public art funding?
I think that the city should have a robust but reasonable investment in the arts. The arts help create an environment where people want to come. It's part of having a business-friendly economy, is having a place where your employees and your company want to be there. But it shouldn't take over the budget in any way. It should be a very reasonable but focused area, and I think there needs to be a lot more community involvement in it. It shouldn't be designed by committee, but there should definitely be community involvement and feedback into suggested arts. I look at the Big Blue Ring as a potential. Right now, there's nothing we can do about it. I think of it kind of like a scar. It's there. I can't do anything about it. I'm starting to get used to it, but that doesn't mean I'm happy it's there in the first place.
Thank you. Nate?
So I think with the public art funding, this is another conversation that unfortunately has been turned into a political football, and I think that there are people who are exploiting a lot of misinformation to try to make people upset about it. This is fixed. By and large, the city already addressed this, and for people to be making a big issue out of this, there's no question that there were art projects that were outsourced to other countries that shouldn't have happened. There's no question that there were art projects that were created that shouldn't have happened. But the city of Calgary has actually changed the entire way that public art is managed, and it's now being done in a way that is going to see much more local artists supported. It's going to keep the money for public art inside of Calgary, and I think that's exactly how it should be. I don't think that we should be having a conversation about things like over towers or the Big Blue Ring, because those were mistakes that were recognized as mistakes, and changes were put in place to make sure that those mistakes aren't repeated.
Thank you. Brent?
Public art, Big Blue Ring, we could put it on its side and make it into a hulu, would be one thing. But I think we could probably use something and make something out of it. Part of this reconciliation that's going on right now, and make it into a dream catcher. And make it look something and have something that where people come into Calgary, they see something. You know, so let's think about solutions and stuff. And as for what they did change the art budget and funding and stuff, and 1% of development goes to arts, and that's fine. But the board and the people that choose it need to look further inside of what kind of art they want. There's towns, Chemainus in BC, they were losing everything. So what they did is they painted all their buildings, and they had artists, and they left and whatever. It's beautiful. It creates a tourism attraction. So we have underpasses, overpasses, walls. I mean, the arts community is key. I sat on the museum board when we put the museum together in Campbell River, and we talked about all the history and such things like the same thing as the wall we have in Calgary. I think it's beautiful. And let's use our artists, and let's go and create some art all over the city, but tasteful art. Things that people like.
Thank you. Mark?
City of Calgary is not just roads and buildings and towers. It's a combination of all cultures, and all cultures should be addressed when we create our art. That's fine. But at the same time, why create some art that makes no sense? And like Nick said, mistakes were made, corrected, we make sure that mistakes don't happen again. At the same time, we should have local artists. Calgary is very innovative people. Calgary is very educated people. Calgary has very artsy people. We should be able to find so many artists here. If not, then we have Alberta all across. So, where this art is so important, so is important to control our spending on the art so that we can have a balance.
Thank you. Jasmine?
So I agree with many of the other candidates that arts is not the problem. Bad policy was the culprit in some of our previous decisions. They had a rule that 1% of infrastructure spending would go towards art, and some of those placement of art would go on places like Deerfoot, which might not be the best spot for public art. And much of that has been rectified now. I think that that's very positive. I know that we want to have the focus on local artists. I also, my understanding is we are subject to some of the NAFTA regulations around public art once it's over a certain amount. So we have to just have conversations that are accurate and aren't just hating on public art, because that's something that people tend to do. Another thing is arts, culture, and entertainment is going to be a huge part of our downtown revitalization. Arts is an economic driver. And, you know, if you talk to anyone who works for Calgary Economic Development, they'll tell you Calgary isn't, you know, not getting business from other places because we're not a low-cost jurisdiction. We are a low-cost jurisdiction, but big companies are actually already looking amongst low-cost jurisdictions. The things that get them to come here are your talent, your services, your thriving arts and culture scene, which is something that Calgary really needs to work on, something I'll be very supportive of.
Thank you. And Kabir?
Yeah, thank you. Arts are vital to a thriving city. You know, in Calgary, we made some steps to correct some mistakes in the past. You know, I think we learned that there's no need to erect a monument to commemorate the completion of a piece of key infrastructure. The art, as I've seen it, needs to be engaging. It's something that people like, something that we want to come and see. And if we are to continue to invest in arts in our cities, I do feel that it is important. It is one aspect that we can look at, but we should still spend money on is it needs to be something that of value. It's almost like an investment, where you are putting money in which you create a localized draw to overcome it. That piece, for example, where we go over downtown is very contentious for that council when they passed it. When you look at any promotional photo of Calgary that we're just showing. So that's, again, the execution of that project could have been done differently, but the essence of that project was to create a landmark and an identity of the city. So if we were to invest in art, the prioritization of art and other aspects of our service really is a different question altogether. But if we are to continue to invest in it, it needs to be well thought out. It needs to serve as a draw of traffic and not a mere memorial of completion of improvement.
Thank you. Our next question will start with me. Recently, crime seems to be on the increase. There was a shooting in Coventry Hills recently. Car prowlings are up, and there seems to be a significant shortfall of police officers on the street. How will you address the shortfall of police and the needs of safety and well-being in the community?
Sure. Before I answer that, though, I just want to make it clear with my last answer to the last question, there is a difference between art and decoration, and I think that it is incumbent on the city to make sure that they are supporting both, because if we just go for what's palatable, it's going to get real boring real quick. In regards to the crime piece, one of the questions that's come up a lot is whether or not I support the whole defund movement. Absolutely not. But I think it's really important to realize that more often than not, crime is symptomatic of other issues, and there is a whole lot that the city can do to address those issues. And there are some amazing programs that the City of Calgary already has through the Calgary Police Service that do important diversion work and that do important education work. And if we're going to be investing any money into anything, those are the places that we need to really be putting the money in. One of the programs that I want to see huge expansion in is the PACT team, which is a team where we see a mental health nurse teaming up with a police officer, and they go and they deal with people in crisis so that those situations don't escalate into incredibly tragic outcomes, which we have seen in the city all too often. But it's really important to remember that as easy as it is...
Attention everyone, the pool is now closed. The pool is now closed.
Forget
It
the
is
pool party
6:30 p.m. You have half an hour left in the gym. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important to remember is that we don't demonize people who are partaking in a lot of crimes, because more often than not, it's an act of desperation. And I think that we need to be doing a whole lot more to be proactive and preventative as opposed to retaliatory, because that only perpetuates that cycle.
Thank you. Brent?
Crime and such is, sun break my eyes, is a problem based off economics. So we know that if we don't keep our kids busy, they get into trouble. And right now, people don't have jobs. I've talked to people who lost everything. 3 restaurants, jewelry stores, houses, everything. And so if we get our economic stream back in line and get jobs for people, they're going to have less time to go and do this kind of thing. Also, I think we should need to address the Young Offenders Act. And some governments think we need to have less. I believe that if a young person commits a serious crime, they pay the price for it. And if you don't have cause and effect going on, then people will just walk all over it. Because right now, criminals have more rights than all of us. You know, we can't go and fight back. We have to just sort of watch them take all our stuff out of our house. Because we could get charged if we beat them up. And this is the kind of stuff that is wrong.
Thank you. Mark?
This thing has come at the doors quite a lot when I have door knocked, and few people have suggested me that we should have a community policing, and I'm just contemplating that idea as well, and I'm creating a process as soon as I become city councillor. A community policing, a police officer dedicated to that community. He or she understands the concept or that community, rather than anybody who, when you call 911 and somebody comes from Southwest, somebody comes from all the way Northwest, not understanding the culture of the ward. And I will be looking at the process that there is a community policing station, small community policing station, where there's a social worker, a healthcare professional, and or other help available with a phone call. So crime is up on increase, and at the same time we need to do a lot more to understand the communities, to work with the communities, and that's, as a city councillor, I will undertake.
Thank you. Jasmine?
So we do have a community policing model in Calgary, and I believe that the police are an important, essential service. But police are a crisis response for crime and crime prevention. And as Nate mentioned, they've been tasked with managing addictions, mental health, and many social issues like homelessness. And we have other supports in the city, like the DOPE team and the PAC team, that could be better funded. I think that would relieve some of the work of police so that they can focus more on crime and crime prevention. I'm a big supporter of the social safety net, the small amount of the social safety net that the city does provide to our citizens. We have seen an increasingly strained situation because of cuts that we've seen to social programming from the province. We feel that right on the ground. Our police feel that, our citizens feel that. And so you can always count on me to work with all of our stakeholders, our civic partners, our police, our citizens, to advocate for a better system. And I think that is going to take all of us to innovate, to figure out what it's going to look exactly like. But I don't think that we can continue to use the model. I don't think more police is necessarily the answer to all of our problems. It's actually getting to the social root causes of what's happening.
Thank you. Here.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And our emergency services, including police, are a core aspect of our service delivery. What we need on calls today is the best responder to respond to the call. And I think we need to support our police now more than ever with appropriate resourcing, whether it be our PAC teams and providing them with resources. We have to really support our first responders, because they're the ones that help keep our city safe. Stolen catalytic converters in Country Hills, garage break-ins in Coventry. I myself was set up one time in a park with my booth, and I saw someone come and lock check my car. So crime is definitely on the rise. Shorter term, the ending of the pandemic will help curb crime. Right now, unemployment is high. People are resorting to things like this. But we have to really think in the short term, whether it is more boots on the ground, whether it is providing more resources. But longer term, we have to get to the social root of the cause as to why it's happening, and really implement the preventative measures that allow to curb crime and really prevent it from happening in the first place, and allowing residents and citizens to lead their best lives.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, over the last, couple of decades, serious crime has been trending down. However, especially in Calgary, minor crimes of opportunity have been trending upwards. Part of that is the fact that we're asking the police to do more and more jobs rather than their main job. I fully support programs like PACT and also funding groups that look at core and symptoms, homelessness, youth at risk, mental health. They need to be supported because you support that and you lower the crime, particularly the minor crimes that are really kind of affecting people, the prowler, the threats, and so on. The city is responsible for funding the police. But the city is not the one that actually chooses what the police budget is. That's the police commission. So there has to be a careful figuring out of exactly how we handle that. And finally, I guess what I really want to point out is that if we get the police to focus on their job, and then we have other groups focusing on the behind-the-scenes stuff, the police will have more time to do their job properly, and that helps everybody. Oh, also, I really want to support and fund the equivalent of block watch groups, such as what the NHCA has.
Thank you. Next question, I'll start with Brent. This is a two-part question. So the first question I will ask, I expect a very quick answer from each of you, and then I'll give the second part of the question, which should probably also be fairly quickly. If elected, what is the one tangible and specific thing you will make a priority that we can later measure your success on?
Helping get the city's finances in order.
Okay, Kumar?
Very important is to have financial accountability at City Hall and maximizing expenditures and working on a zero-based budget.
Jasmine?
So in a hyper-local perspective, in the first 100 days, things I want to work on are getting another bus stop up into Livingston, pushing to get a crosswalk in Panorama near the lake where we have very high traffic, and then also resolving some of our congestion and neighbor disputes related to schools in Hidden Valley and parking with parents.
Thank you. Kabir?
Tax stability, and see our taxes not rise at a rapid pace year over year.
Ian?
Primarily budget and tax related. That's going to be the answer for most of us. And also getting rid of the constant in-camera meetings and making sure that they're only just there. And I'll use Robert's Rules of Order to do that if necessary.
And Nate?
I think it's really important to realize that there are certain things that a councillor can influence, and there are certain things that are made as a board decision within city council. One of the things that is definitely achievable by a city councillor is better communication between the councillor and their constituents, what's going on in the city, what are the major programs that they need to know about, because that directly impacts the whole trust piece, which is the biggest thing that I'm concerned about.
Thank you. Now the second part of this question takes a little bit more imagination. If you were on council and had a magic wand that could fix or do anything instantly with no complications or cost, what would be the first thing you wave the magic wand at and why? I love this question.
My magic wand, my kids always want that too. It's just like the money tree they have in the backyard. Good Lord. It probably would have been 10 years ago to have the green line up here, but not come up Center Street.
Thank you. Kumar?
magic wand will be electing Kumar Sharma as a city councillor, and the passion that I bring to city council will create a magic in this ward.
Do you have a minute for your like?
Okay, so I think if I could wave my magic wand, I would fix the tax system. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is funding the Canadian city. We still fund the Canadian city in the 21st century like we did in the 20th, but all the ways we raise revenue don't make sense anymore. So if you look at the way businesses operate, everyone's moving to more of a Netflix model of not opening a brick and mortar store. The city raises money through property taxes, and we're basically running a blockbuster style of raising revenue. It's outdated to the challenges that we have. So if I could wave a wand, it would be to give us different revenue raising tools, ones that are better suited to the 21st century. And this is something that I will actively be advocating for with the provincial government. We hear so many times candidates saying, we need to go to the provincial government and ask for a bigger hammer. We need more money from the provincial government. We don't need more money. We need different tools.
Thank you. Revere?
That's a really good question. I'm still kind of stumped as to what I would wave the wand and do, but if there's something that I would wave the wand and want to change, it would be as to how our city has built its transit system, and it's sort of the non-user friendly nature of our system. I've taken public transit my entire life until I moved up to Ward 3, Panorama Hills, because it's not conducive, it's not simple to take here. And if we could wave the wand and fix, I would run more LRT lines into more dense pockets, into more developed pockets of our city to maximize our transit ridership and make it more convenient so our residents can get to places in a more time efficient manner, and which would also boost our transit rider rates and also usership of the system.
Thank you. Ian?
I also thought transit almost right away. That was my first thought, but then I had the luxury of actually having some time to think about it. And what I would wave that magic wand at is to move Calgary ahead, so we achieved a state where we had a diversified, vibrant downtown and economy, because that creates the tax base and that creates the ability to have good transit and all of the other things on our wish list by having the money to be able to do it properly.
And Nathan?
Well, I'm kind of wondering if Ian just went ahead and read off my paper. A fully diversified economy that addresses the issues not only just in regards to revenue, but the issues that we're seeing in regards to climate change and all of those issues. Because if we have a fully diversified economy, we won't experience the boom and bust cycle that we've been experiencing for the last ever, and it will give us much more stable everything.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mark, and that is, we are a winter city. We spend millions of dollars every year clearing the bike lanes downtown, in addition to the infrastructure repairs caused by the salt and subsequent lawsuits when people slip in them. What is your position on bike lanes?
Well, first of all, I would like to say in the last question that if I can have a magic wand, I share my passion, but at the same time, I want to say that if I can have a tax freeze for at least 4 years of next council time, that will create a great magic and to the city of Calgary and Ward 3. And at the same time, when you ask me about the bike lanes and clearing the snow, I've already mentioned that we are not clearing the snow. We are just plowing a little bit and leaving the snow at the streets. So, was the question regarding the plowing the snow, or was the question regarding the bike lanes?
Your opinion on bike lanes.
Sorry?
Your opinion on bike lanes.
Opinion on bike lanes. Bike lanes are very important because they connect the communities. At the same time, we should be using wisely and clearing snow on the bike lanes as well.
Thank you. Jasmine?
I am supportive of bike lanes. I think we need to have different ways of getting around our city. I think we have a great pathway system. It needs some connections in certain areas of Ward 3. That's something I'm committed to working on, but I think that thinking about how we can make Calgary a place that is easier to get around, of course by car, but by transit and also by bikes, I think is a great thing. In the pandemic, we were sold out of bikes in the city. You couldn't even find one. And I think that that's a great thing. And we're an active city. This is our strategic advantage, is that we can market our city as a place that is great for people to come if they want to live that active lifestyle. So, yes.
Thank you. Rear.
Yeah, you know, Calgary has one of the most robust bike systems that I've ever seen or in any Canadian city. It's something that we're proud of as a city, that you can bike from end to end on a paved pathway. You know, I somewhat question the priority when it comes to snow clearing activities as to what the city chooses to plow or clear first. You look at the stats, 80% of people who live in Ward 3 commute by vehicle. The car is still the primary mode of transportation in our ward, and we should prioritize it based on that accordingly, in which we clear major routes and streets first, and then move to the bike lanes after. But it's clear that people are looking at other ways to transport and move themselves around our city, and biking and walking is another huge aspect of transportation in our city, active transportation in our city. Any major project, except the brand new bridge built on 14th Street, has pathways and sidewalks on both sides. Understanding and recognizing that people also will not just drive over that bridge, they'll also walk over it too. So I think we have to continue to invest in our bike path. We also have to prioritize based on what citizens are actually doing, not what we think they should be doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bike lanes are a no-brainer in new developments. They're easy to build in because they're from the beginning, but they're more of a challenge when you are trying to install them into streets that were never designed with even the concept of somebody biking or even walking in many cases in Ward 3. So there's a challenge given that. I think that I'm very proud of our bike system. I think that we should continue to support it. I do agree with Gerber that we need to prioritize based on use. I think also, though, that we should cut off part of that and to make sure that it gets some funding. If you do it 100% on use, what will end up happening is only the most popular thing will get any money because we're always out of money. So we need to put aside a chunk to make sure that our bike lanes are maintained and work properly, and then put the rest of it on priority based.
Thank you. Nate.
So I'm a big believer in bike lanes, but the caveat that I'll put on that is I think that the requirement needs to be bike lanes where appropriate. I think a lot of the frustration that people experience from bike lanes stems from the fact that there were streets that were high volume vehicle streets that they decided to put bike lanes on, and a lot of people felt the impact of that. Whereas if they moved those bike lanes a block north or south, we would have negated all of those issues. So I think the where appropriate is the big caveat that I'll put on there. In regards to the questions about the snow removal, I think it's important to note we're largely talking about different types of equipment that are being used on major streets versus the bike lanes. And in regards to the concerns about people trying to sue the city because the bike lanes weren't cleared, I put winter tires on my vehicles. If you're riding a bike and you're not wearing appropriate equipment and you're not equipped your bike appropriately for the season, fundamentally that's on you.
Thank you. Brent.
Connecting community to community is awesome. So, as a person from BC, we didn't have this bike track stuff that we have here. And so I think we do an excellent job of connecting communities, and need to do a better job of a couple places in Coventry. But the bike lanes downtown cause a disruption in traffic, and we're not living in the Jetson area yet, so we can't fly around and we can't weave in and out. And I have a friend that lives on the side of one of those bike lanes, and he tells me he counts 3, 4. And as for snow removal, I agree with others that the bike lanes are our last priority. If you're riding your bike at a foot of snow, you should just think about that for a bit. And cars get the right of way, and the bike lanes get the last priority for snow removal. And so it's streets and sidewalks. Streets and sidewalks. I've traveled all over the world, and in Germany, and this is what they're trying to do here, make it into a sort of like European cities and stuff, where bikes. The problem is they are high density. We are not high density.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, so the following questions are simple yes, no. We'll try and get through several yes and no's before we get to the end here, so that we can answer a few more questions for people. So we're just going to start for this round. We're just going to start at Jasmine and work our way around. So the first question is, are you in favor of increasing the parks budget so that it includes playground replacements? Because so many playgrounds in Ward 3 are at the end of their life cycle.
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm proud of what we've done for up and treating, yes.
Yep.
Yes. Strong yes.
Okay, the next question is, do you support the reintroduction of fluoridation into the water? Again, starting here and working around.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes, and fluoridation is very healthy. because-
Just yes or no? The next question is, City Council has committed $1 billion over the next 10 years for downtown revitalization. Do you support that plan as it is now?
Yes.
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 Boy, you're killing me with the lack of nuance here. Maybe.
No.
Yes.
And the last yes or no question is, the Nose Creek Valley to the east of Ward 3 alongside of Coventry Hills is known as the former Calgary Edmonton Wagon Trail and has a number of historic artifacts in it. And the current City Council plan is to destroy that valley and build warehouses. Do you support that plan or oppose it?
Well, I need more information. Yeah, is that okay?
Yep.
That's the
Still doing that.
development that they're proposing right now.
Yeah.
I'm supporting that development, yes.
Sorry, can you repeat the
Do
question?
you support the development of the Stony Industrial Area destroying the Calgary
No, I
Edmonton
don't.
Wagon Trail?
Hard.
The present council just did it without telling me, but I don't think that you gotta respect artifacts and stuff.
I don't know much about it. I need to study on it.
Did you understand that question? Just because you hesitated, so I want to make sure you understood that.
Yeah, in my city, yes, I mean, it's an approved plan that's gonna be built. So I wouldn't have no bearing on whether I agree or not with it. We have to preserve, obviously, our Nose Creek and the fringe areas, any historical significance that exists in the area. That's definitely a priority, but yeah, the plan's already done.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now with your conclusions. You each have a minute to sum up what you'd like to say to everybody, and we'll start with Jasmine.
Okay, so thanks for the great conversation tonight, and to everyone who has tuned in. My commitment to you is to make evidence-based decisions, to bring my policy expertise to help us navigate the complex waters that are at the city to get the best for our Lord. I have a strong work ethic, and I'm committed to nonpartisanship. I've never ran for another level of government. I'm not a member of any political party. I don't believe it's the job of a city councillor to show up on budget day and make an impassioned speech on your behalf. It's my job to go door to door to all of my colleagues, getting them on side so that we can collaborate and move forward in the city. That's the type of leadership that we need. That's the type of leader that I will be. And I believe that if we want different outcomes, we need to elect folks who can work together to get things done. You can see every endorsement and all my donors on my website, on my donate page. I think that's something that's very important and was a commitment that I said that I would do before it passed polls. So please take a look.
Thank you for all listeners for watching today. This is clearly a pivotal and historic election for you. And Ward 3 is lucky to have very good candidates. We have people who are hardworking and relentless, Olympic-sized dreams. We have people who have a lot of skills, a lot of background, and have been service to our community. We have an individual who is a fierce community advocate and wants better for his community above and beyond everything else. We have individuals who have a great track record of success and want to apply ideology from the past to solve modern day issues. We have people who are running who have made a great life in this country and are trying to take it to the next level. What Calgary needs actually is all of us. But what Ward 3, what we need at council, is someone who can unite all these types of people and move forward in one direction. That's what I do best, And that's what I will do as your next ward 3 councillor.
It's hard to get a good sense of a candidate from a 3-minute introduction and some questions with a 90-second limit. So I invite everyone to check out my website for detailed positions on these issues and many, many more, or send me an email to find out, basically ask what matters most to you. I'll be outside after the debate to answer questions and hand out brochures and other materials. Additionally, I'm available anytime to meet with you or a group of friends over a Zoom chat. While considering who to choose for your next councillor, consider where they've been before this election. Did they just appear out of the woodwork when the election was called, or have they been here contributing to the community all along, even when there wasn't a paycheck involved? I believe that if you consider experience, education, proven commitment to the community, and thoughtful positions on issues, you'll choose me to be your new Ward 3 councillor this fall.
I read an interesting comment on the Facebook machine today where people were commenting on who they believed was and was not ready for this job. I think it's important to be clear. I don't think anybody, myself included, in this room is ready for the scope and magnitude of what that role is going to entail. What I can say is that through my role as a paramedic, I have had to respond to many situations that I was not ready for. And the thing that I learned is that if this is what we're doing today, this is what we're doing today. And I think that it's incumbent on anyone who's running for office to recognize that there's going to be a tremendous learning curve involved. And I think it's also incumbent on everyone to make sure that they're being transparent and honest about who they are, who's backing them, and who's running the forces behind who's backing them.
I'm a leader that I've managed lots of companies, and I'm a leader that reaches out and collaborates. And everything's culture-based. And when, as a manager or leader, I go after how to build a culture. I don't go after people, because the culture deals with policies. And as to what Nate's saying, no one's ready. Well, if you haven't done the job before, then you're not. But change, we have an opportunity for change direction. And where I'm at, I believe in solving problems. And we have an opportunity. And the learning curve for a rookie candidate is 1 to 2 years, where I can hit the ground running. Go to my website at btward3yyc.ca, or give me a call. I answer calls very fast, and to learn more.
Hello, this is Mark Sharma. I'm running my campaign to bring financial accountability at City Hall. And in Ward 3, Jasmine Mia, a candidate endorsed by TPA. Are the unions attempting to use this $2 million slush fund to influence or buy democracy? On what basis Ms. Mia and Mr. Brent, who is endorsed by St. Calgary, and Jasmine endorsed by Future Calgary, on what basis are these candidates receiving support in the form of financial or in-kind support?
Zero.
Well, we have to disclose that, and we'll see that. Do these candidates exchange promises of no layoffs for upcoming term, or ensuring that city administration will not place for sale city core services to the private sector, or a promise of wage increase or a benefit of increases for upcoming council term? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. For those that weren't tuned in at the beginning, we have 2 candidates that aren't here. Mr. Ekbar had a family emergency last minute and had to cancel. And Mr. Lynn withdrew from this forum about 4 days ago because of the change in the setup that we had, and we adjusted the time by an hour. You're welcome to drive over to Vivo right now. Many of the school trustee candidates are outside in the west parking lot. They'd be happy to talk to you about why you should support them as a school trustee. There's actually lots of candidates this election, which is great to see. As well, these 6 individuals will hang around outside as well. If you'd like to talk to any of them, get a bit of literature from them that you haven't received already, ask your own questions. Now's the time. Come on by Vivo and ask those questions. We'll be hanging around for probably the next 30 minutes or so. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Really appreciate all the questions, and the candidates will receive all of the questions that you all submitted so that they have an idea of what else they could be answering. Thanks so much. Have a good night.